The William J. Fischer housing development, better known as the Fischer Projects, was a housing project in the Algiers area of New Orleans, Louisiana, notoriously known for a series of high-profile homicides in the 1970s and the 1980s. The Fischer, also the last conventional public housing project constructed in New Orleans. It originally consisted of a 13-floor high-rise and 14 three-floor units. The Fischer would undergo redevelopment starting in 2004, that in which none of the original low-rise buildings would remain. Located along Whitney Avenue in the Algiers area of the city's West Bank, which is recognized as part of the 15th Ward, the project would get its name from William J. Fischer, who served as chairman of Haino in the 1950s. In May of 1989, a crowd would be sprayed with bullets in a courtyard of the Fischer, crushing a man and wounding 4 others. The very next month, a veteran police officer who was on a stakeout in the project would narrowly escape serious injury, and his van was riddled with bullets. Officer Gary Dewey was showered with broken glass and metal fragments at 9:38 p.m. and would appear to be an attempt to knock him off. Crime was so ferocious in the Fischer where the RTA, aka Rita, had to discontinue nighttime services through the Fischer and along Whitney Avenue after several buses were shot at or had bricks and rocks thrown at them. If you know, you know. In the summer of 1990, NOPD would arrest 18 people and seize 2 ARs as part of a crackdown on crime in the Fischer Project. The NOPD would beef up patrols in the project starting at the end of August of 1990 in an attempt to curtail hustling and violence. Both marked and unmarked patrol cars would allegedly spend 8 to 9 hours twice weekly in the 1,500-unit complex instead of the occasional drive-through it would normally do to monitor hustlers and steppers out the project. This is the story of the Fischer Project. Designers Mathis Berman and August Perez would start construction of the Fischer Project in 1963. By October of 1965, 1,002 units will be opened to tenants. The Fischer would hopefully at long last be a solution to the overcrowding of the urban slums. The construction plans for the Fischer were based off of the William J. Gus homes, aka the Melf, built in 1964. Within a couple of years of opening, the Fischer will become plagued with crime and violence. Newspaper headlines highlighting homicides, dope dealing, hooking, and junkies would explode across New Orleans, claiming the unequal distribution of low-income families into one condensed area had caused the chaos. By the 1980s, crime, violence, and dealing had ravished the Fischer Project, leading to polarizing homicides and waves of crime. Plenty of the crushings and robberies that would take place in this unforgotten wasteland would take the lives of innocent people. Residents living in the community would often keep silent about crime, fearing retribution from those committing them. It wouldn't be long before, in the eyes of many, the Fischer Projects will become an uninhabitable place for its residents to live. Dealing and violence was running rampant. Most of the NOPD officers were afraid to even enter the Fischer Projects. A special task force would be constructed by the police department that was allegedly trained to deal with violent crime, giving birth to a crew of dicks called the Urban Squad. In the early morning hours of August 29th of 2005, Hurricane Katrina will come ashore, leveling New Orleans and much of the surrounding area. Thousands of local residents will follow at the time Mayor Ray Nagin's orders to evacuate hours earlier. However, thousands of the poor and disenfranchised would not be able to evacuate. The Fischer, populated by several generations of residents who survived Hurricanes Betsy and Camille, wouldn't feel there was a rush to leave. High winds and surging waters had never done much damage to the brick facade and metal framing of the Fischer. Most would also have no means to leave. Many Fischer residents, including Bernice Gibson, the mother of a key figure in this story, didn't have a driver's license, let alone a vehicle to leave. In would step Jabbar Gibson. To them dicks, Jabbar was looked at as a low-level dealer out the Fischer. To the residents of the project, Jabbar would be the man who would rescue them from the horrors of Hurricane Katrina when no one else would. After 2 days without power, food, or even a cool fall breeze, with no assurance that anyone would come to save them, Jabbar and his partners would start plotting of ways to escape. They would hit the streets looking for whips to siphon gas. It wouldn't be long before they would spot a school bus rumbling down LB Landry Avenue. Upon flagging down the bus, the driver would tell them that he snatched the bus up in Algiers Point. Going to the area, Jabbar and his partners would find about 12 yellow buses parked in a barn. After searching the barn for several minutes, they would run across an unlocked office. Inside of that office is where Jabbar and his partners would find the keys to the buses hanging on a door. It would take them about 30 minutes to find a bus that would actually start. They would all hop in the bus and head back to the projects. There wouldn't be much time to waste. Jabbar was already figuring they'd have to go with the move before Rising Waters or them dicks would try to stop residents from using stolen buses to escape to safety. Word was already on the streets that people were popping up whips to escape the city. About 60 people had hopped on the bus. Just when they were about to ride out, them dicks would pull up, making everyone exit the bus. After Jabbar handed the keys over, he cut it out on them boys, believing he had a warrant out for evading and resisting arrest from a prior incident that had taken place. Afraid that she would not make it out of New Orleans alive, Bernice Gibson, Jabbar's mom, would manage to convince the officers that giving Jabbar the keys and letting him take control of the bus was necessary to evacuate the 60-plus people who were in dire need of help. Oddly enough, after the cops would return the keys to Jabbar, his mom would not get on the bus. Jabbar was not able to convince her. With his mom in the rearview mirror, Jabbar pulled the bus onto Landry Avenue, merged onto the West Bank Expressway service road, and mashed out. With little space to spare on the bus, as they headed to Houston, Jabbar would stop several times along Highway 90 and pick up people who were flagging the bus down for a ride. Some of these people were barely making it. Many of the passengers were in an emotional mental distress from the previous few days. Others were sick or disabled and in need of immediate medical attention. To make matters worse, at least a couple of the women were pregnant. The bus will finally arrive at the Astrodome just after nightfall, completing a 12-hour trip that normally took 5 hours. They would be the first to arrive at the Astrodome. They had beaten the buses that had been sent by FEMA. Red Cross would deny them entry into the Astrodome. After hours of going back and forth, the Red Cross will finally allow them entry into the Astrodome. Jabbar will be among the early heroes of Katrina. A man barely out of his teens did what the government had failed to do: rescue dozens of poor people from an impending disaster. This was the story of Jabbar Gibson, the Fischer Project hero.
Five, 4, 3,
2, 1.
Oh my God, did you get that?